Be anxious for nothing. Of all the commands in the Bible, this might be the one that feels the most impossible. Because if you could simply decide to stop being anxious, you would have done it already. And so this verse sits on our coffee mugs and our phone wallpapers and quietly makes anxious people feel worse. One more thing to fail at. But here's what changes everything. The Greek word Paul uses for anxious is not a feeling, it's a picture. A picture so precise that when you see it, you will recognize exactly what your mind does at 2 a.m. And the man who wrote this command, he wrote it from prison, chained 24 hours a day to a Roman soldier, which makes the image he chose for the peace of God a military image, one of the most stunning details in the entire New Testament. Quick note before we go on. If you've ever read a verse your whole life and wondered what's underneath the English, that's every video on this channel. One verse, one word, what it actually says. Subscribing means you won't miss the next one. Alright, the word. The Greek word translated anxious is Merimnao, and it comes from a root, meridzo, that means to divide, to split into pieces. So, anxiety, in the language of the New Testament, is not primarily an emotion. It is a divided mind, a mind pulled in 2 directions at once. Part of you is here, in this room, this conversation, this moment, and part of you is somewhere else, in tomorrow's meeting, next month's bill, the test result that hasn't come back yet, torn in half. That's the picture. And you know this feeling. It's why you can read the same paragraph 4 times and absorb nothing. It's why you can sit at dinner with people you love and not hear a word. Anxiety doesn't just make you feel bad, it makes you absent. Half of you is always deployed somewhere in the future, fighting battles that haven't happened yet. Jesus used this exact word in the Sermon on the Mount. Do not be anxious about tomorrow. Same word. And he diagnosed the same division. No one can serve 2 masters. The anxious mind is a mind trying to live in 2 places at once. So when Paul says, be anxious for nothing, he is not saying stop having feelings. He's describing a torn mind. And then in the same sentence, he hands over the needle and thread. Because this verse doesn't just name the problem, it gives a mechanism. And the mechanism comes from the least likely place imaginable. Here's where this verse stops being a coffee mug and becomes something else entirely. Paul wrote these words from prison, most likely in Rome around 62 AD under house arrest, which meant he was chained by the wrist to a member of the Praetorian Guard. Rotating shifts, 24 hours a day. He could not eat, sleep, write, or pray without a Roman soldier attached to his arm. He was awaiting trial before Nero. The realistic outcomes were release or execution. He did not know which. That is the man writing, "Be anxious for nothing." This is not advice from a beach, not a wellness influencer with a candle. This is a chained man with an unknown verdict hanging over him. And the letter he writes from that chain is, incredibly, the most joyful letter in the New Testament. The word joy appears in it over a dozen times. Rejoice in the Lord always. That's the verse immediately before this one, written by a man who might be executed. Which means whatever Paul knows about anxiety, it works in prison. It works chained to a soldier. It works with a death sentence pending. This is not theory. It's a field report. So what's the mechanism? Look at the structure of the verse. It's precise. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, Let your request be made known to God. Notice, the verse doesn't say stop worrying. It says replace the direction. Anxiety turns inward. The mind chews on itself, rehearsing the same scenarios in a loop. Paul redirects the entire current outward. Same energy, different destination. And he names 3 components. Each one matters. Prayer. That's the general posture. Turning toward God at all. Supplication. That's specific requests, not vague spiritual sentiment. The actual thing you're afraid of, named out loud. The diagnosis, the bill, the person. Anxiety thrives on vagueness. Naming the fear to God drags it into the light. And then the third one, thanksgiving. And this is the hinge of the whole verse. Why thanksgiving? Because gratitude is the one mental act that anxiety cannot coexist with. Anxiety rehearses what might go wrong. Thanksgiving rehearses what God has already done. They run in opposite directions. One scans the future for threats. The other scans the past for faithfulness. Paul isn't adding a polite formality. He's prescribing the counter-motion to the divided mind. Prayer without thanksgiving becomes desperation. Thanksgiving without prayer becomes denial. Together, they become trust. And then comes verse 7, the promise. And it contains the most brilliant word choice in the entire letter. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The word translated guard is Phroureo, and it is not a soft word. It's a military term. It means to garrison, to station soldiers, to post a sentinel on the wall. Now, remember who's writing this, a man chained to a Roman guard. Paul looked at the soldier attached to his own wrist and turned the image inside out. You think this man is guarding me? Let me tell you what actually guards a person. And remember who's receiving it. Philippi was a Roman colony, a garrison city, settled by veteran soldiers. The people hearing this letter read aloud lived their whole lives under military protection. They slept soundly because a watch was posted. They knew exactly what a garrison meant. It means someone else stays awake so you don't have to. That is the picture Paul chooses for the peace of God. Not a feeling that floats over you. A sentinel posted at the door of your heart and your mind, checking what gets in. And notice what this promise does not say. It does not say your circumstances will change. Paul's chain stayed on. The trial still came. The verse promises something stranger, a peace that surpasses all understanding, meaning a peace that doesn't match the situation. By every rational calculation, you should be falling apart, and you're not. Not because you're strong, because something is standing guard that you didn't station there. If this kind of thing is what you're here for, we've walked through the Hebrew word for anxious scanning in Isaiah 41, the secret place of Psalm 91, and the yoke of Matthew 11. The whole anxiety and protection series is on the channel, one verse at a time. But let's land this one. The divided mind. That's what anxiety is. Merimnao, a mind torn between here and every feared tomorrow. And the answer is not try harder to stop. The answer is a transfer. In everything, by prayer, by naming the fear with thanksgiving, hand the divided pieces to God. And what comes back is not an explanation. It's a garrison. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The man who wrote that was in chains, and he was more free than his guard.